Welcome to Engedrian. If this is your first time listening, or even if you are returning, be sure to follow us on Facebook, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube for additional content, battle maps, and background details. We hope you are enjoying our adventure. Let's see what happens next. As Malaysia looks down from the hole in the ceiling, ready to descend, the cavern grows bright with light, illuminating the stone beneath him. After a few seconds, Theophania pokes it with her sword, and some sort of tentacled beak emerges. Malaysia draws his short sword. Malaysia attacks Grick A with short sword. Advantage, autocritical, double bonus for weight addition to damage. Rolls 22 versus AC 14 for a hit, for 17 piercing damage. Malaysia falls from the hole in the ceiling with his short sword extending directly towards the creature's head, stabbing it deep in the back behind its tentacles. It squawks and writhes with pain. The party hears 3 more loud squawking shrieks, one from where Peace went up and 2 more behind them. Malaysia makes a dexterity saving throw, DC 15, rolls 21, takes 2 bludgeoning damage. As his sword buries itself in the creature's thick neck, the beast unfurls its full, long, slender body and thrashes, sending Malaysia flying towards the cave wall, where he lands on his feet but slams against the wall, breaking loose several chunks of large stone. His sword is stuck in the creature. Peace starts to descend from the hole in the ceiling as it illuminates with bright light. They can clearly see the stone below them and Umgren and Case nearby staring at it. They pause for a moment and then hear a horrid squawking from further ahead in the cave. The stone below them begins to writhe. Peace attacks Grick B with spear, two-handed, advantage, autocritical, double bonus for weight addition to damage. Rolls 26 versus AC 14 for a hit, 17 piercing damage. Peace, clutching their spear with both hands and putting their full weight into the drop, brings their spear down into the writhing stone, stabbing through its body. Peace lands gracefully behind it. The beast unfurls its full body quickly, snatching the spear from Peace's grasp and leading out a horrific shriek. Everyone rolls for initiative. Malaysia holds action, moves to at least 10 feet away from the creature. Malaysia, a bit stunned from the slam against the wall, takes advantage of being out of the beast's way and moves further back. He decides to wait and see how this unfolds before he acts, as he is unclear what these are. Grick A attacks Theophania with tentacles and beak. Rolls 16 versus AC 17 for a miss. The rock mimic beast lashes out at Theophania's legs with its 4 frightening tentacles, but they make contact with the ground as it is distracted by the sword in its neck. Grick B attacks Case with tentacles and beak. Rolls 20 versus AC 19 for a hit, for 11 bludgeoning damage. Rolls 5 critical for a miss. The beast with Peace's spear in its neck lashes out at Case with its tentacles and slashes him across the legs. It lunges with its beak, but instead finds its own tentacle in its mouth. Vodinus moves to Grick C, attacks with 2 short swords, assassinates, surprise, sneak, dashes to Grick D. Rolls 26 versus AC 14 for 14 piercing damage, 16 surprise attack damage, and 15 sneak attack damage. Vodinus, hearing the creature behind them, rushes the stone beast and slashes with his short sword, decapitating the beast in a single swipe. As its head hits the ground, Vodinus rushes to the other beasts behind the party. Grick D attacks Vodinus with tentacles and beak. Rolls 11 for a miss. As Vodinus rushes it, the last creature lurches towards him with its 4 flailing arms, but Vodinus blocks it with his short swords already up. Case manifests Echo behind Grick B, attacks Grick B with spear two-handed, unleashes Echo. Rolls 24 versus AC 14 for a hit for 7 piercing damage. Rolls 26 versus AC 14 for 10 bludgeoning damage. Case bumps his fists together, and a gray, misty version of himself appears behind the creature. He then lunges at the beast with his own spear, grazing its tentacle but cutting deeply into its side. His echo punches the beast on the opposite side, and it shrieks and goes limp. Inacel moves to Grick A, attacks with Scimitar, casts Healing Word on K. Rolls 25 versus AC 14 for 7 slashing damage, rolls 8 healing. Inacel charges towards the beast that attacked Theophania and slashes it with her crystal scimitar, slicing off the tentacle. She murmurs several words, and Case is infused with healing energy. Umgren moves to within 20 feet of the remaining Gricks, attacks Grick A with Handbow. Rolls 15 versus AC 14 for a hit for 6 piercing damage. Umgren moves between the last 2 beasts engaged with the party and fires a crossbow bolt at the creature with Malaysia's short sword stuck in its neck, smashing into the mouth through the beak and dropping it instantly. Malaysia casts Firebolt at Grick B. Roll 17 versus AC 14 for a hit for 4 fire damage. Seeing the other 3 beasts succumb quickly to his party's attacks, Malaysia launches a blast of fire at the creature facing Fodinas and chars part of its tentacle. He then readies his short sword. Euphania moves into melee with Brick D, makes 2 short sword attacks. Rolls 21 versus AC 14 for 8 piercing damage, and 17 versus AC 14 for 5 piercing damage. With only 1 beast remaining, Theophania charges forward and slashes with both of her short swords, smashing the beast in the beak and tentacle. Peace moves 30 feet towards Grick D, casts Sacred Flame, rolls 4 radiant damage. Brick rolls 20 versus DC 14 dex saves. Peace rushes towards the last beast, stops, and casts down a radiant beam of flame, but the undulating stony reptile slithers out of the way. Malaysia casts Firebolt at Grick D, rolls 23 versus AC 14 for a hit for 8 fire damage. Malaysia launches a second blast of fire at the creature facing Fodinas and chars most of its tentacles and beak. Fodinas attacks Grick D with 2 short swords, rolls 24 versus AC 14 for a hit for 8 piercing damage and 8 sneak attack damage. The creature, distracted by the double blast of flames, does not see Fodinas' short sword come down on its face, slicing it cleanly in half. The beast collapses. The party receives 300 experience points each. Fodinas has reached level 5. Case has reached level 5. Enisel makes a nature check, assisted by Theophania. Rolls 19.
These nasty little underdog stony snakes are called gricks. If these creatures were trapped elsewhere and placed here, I would not be surprised.
She starts inspecting their skin and tentacles.
We found eggs.
Malaysia pulls them from his bag, as does Peace, and places them on the ground. Theophania looks at one carefully, as does Umgurn.
I knew a drow mage that was breeding these and using them to guard sections of the Underdark that she didn't want others to explore. It was a nasty business. She would harvest the eggs from the Grick cave she kept, feed them to captured humanoids of any type, or a drow she didn't like. She had a few scars from attacks, but that was more than 50 years Verana ago and far from here.
Umgurn returns the eggs and begins searching the cavern in more detail.
Wait, we missed a hole.
Malaysia scrambles, with help of Theophania, to the last hole where one of the Grick was resting and climbs inside. After many minutes, he pokes his head out.
Clear out of the way.
The party hears a very loud boom echo from Malaysia's location. A few items drop here and there, and then a bolus of junk emerges and lands on the floor. He pokes his head back and smiles.
No eggs, but I guess this was their nest of stuff.
He drops down into Theophania's arms and lands on the ground. Inisel has managed to collect 13 intact tentacles and skin of all 4 Gricks. She places the materials inside Malaysia's chest of preserving. The rest of the party poke through the debris. The bulk of it is small animal bones, but several larger skulls are present and some other bone fragments. Theophania and Inisel make medicine checks. Roll 13 and 13.
Although there is significant damage, it is clear that at least 4 kobolds, 2 goblins, and a hobgoblin were the victims of these creatures.
Inisel begins arranging all of the bones into piles. Umgurn sighs, knowing there is no sense in arguing, and nods to the party.
Or someone fed them to the Gricks.
Malaysia nods his head worriedly as he looks at the party.
Maybe those that need a short rest, please take one. Malaysia and Case, here.
Umgurn lays his hands on them and heals them back to full health. Peace and Theophania assist Inisel, while Malaysia builds a small fire near the entrance. Fodinas and Case gather up the Grick carcasses and lay them next to the bonework.
Enisel, we can't bury anything in here. It's a solid stone cave.
Theophania continues to gently sort bones.
She's right, our friend. What is your plan?
Peace smiles and pats the lizard folk on the shoulder.
The soil is important, or the fire. I don't think a large fire here is advisable.
She opens her bag and pulls out many feet of oilcloth, unspooling it from a bolt she stuck in her bag. With her scimitar, she cuts large squares and then many strips.
Let's put all of the animal bones together on this one. Then each skull in one cloth with as many appropriate bones as we can match.
After half an hour, all of the bones are accounted for on a cloth with flowers, herbs, and shiny stones. Inisel begins folding the cloth into tight packets, which she secures with the strips. She places the 8 packets inside her bag and then looks up with a smile. Peace smiles back and then looks down at the remaining debris. They extend their claws on one paw and filter through the dust and trash for several minutes, then look up.
Well, these poor fellows didn't die destitute.
She shows them a pile of coins and small gems. Peace receives 34 silver pieces, 25 copper pieces, a small hematite, 2 small tiger eye, a large perfectly round malachite, and a large perfectly round blue quartz. NSL picks up the malachite and quartz and studies them for a moment.
I think these poor souls were thrown down here naked and unarmed. These coins and small gems they swallowed. These 2 orbs are fake eyes. These gricks were placed here and fed so they could breed. Umgern, do you remember how long a grick breeding cycle is?
NSL waves him over.
She wasn't a nice person, so I didn't pay that much attention, but I want to guess that after she fed a grick an egg to a victim, the adult grick would emerge several days later, having consumed most of the organs. Then he would feed on the remaining flesh.
Everyone recoils a bit from the eggs except Malaysia, who promptly picks them up and places them in a sheet of oilcloth, folds it close, and tightly binds it. Umgern smiles.
Well, since there were 7 humanoid bodies, but only 4 gricks, assuming our villain only captured 1 to begin with, these could have been here for only a moon turn or 2.
NSL returns to the carcasses.
What to do with these?
Follow them to the surface.
Fodinus tugs on the rope secured to the piton above that is tied in a circular loop. NSL smiles and nods. Earlier, Fodinus had assured her the meat would be no good and would also begin to smell horribly after a few hours. He pulls some rope from his bag and ties a loop around each carcass, then ties the other end to the rope. After all 4 are secured, he begins pulling the rope in the opposite direction. The 4 carcasses begin ascending into the darkness. NSL crosses to the ladder and begins her climb back up. After about a minute of pulling, the rope seems hung. Fodinus makes a strength check, rolls 11. Despite a few tugs, nothing seems to happen. Case joins Fodinus and then both grab the rope. Fodinus and Case make a combined strength check, roll 22. Their combined strength pulls the rope suddenly down, but they both realize a bit too quickly. A pinging sound is followed by the entire coil of rope along with the 4 carcasses and the piton falling past them and down deeper into the hole. Both of them listen, along with NSL, and after a little more than 4 seconds, they hear a faint crash and possibly a splash and a very faint ping. Case and Fodinus look at each other as NSL climbs back down and stares at them with her arms folded. From below, they hear the sudden, cacophonous roar that is unmistakably a dragon. With the roar of the dragon still haunting their memories, the party climbs back to the bunkhouse level, and the ladders they now know are secure, resets the alarms, including an additional one below the level they just finished exploring, and settles in for a long rest with another raging fire. Malaysia adds the grick eggs to the fire, happy to see the parasites burn to a crisp. Before bedding down with a watch, they converse over dinner, which was a special stew made of dragon meat and several wild flora that NSL harvested before they entered the hole above.
If that was a dragon, which we all think it was, would it be the source of these defenses?
Malaysia sips an extremely strong cup of tea that Peace prepared for everyone to calm their minds.
That is always possible with dragons, but definitely not always true. And this bunkhouse, the ladders, the stoneworked caves, the dragon did not build this. It has chosen to dwell here, or it is also a prisoner. A dragon egg or small wormling could have been placed below, and now may be trapped by its size.
Umgern eats several bits of stew, which is delicious and filling.
Did we just feed it?
Case looks with concern at the group.
Most definitely, but that's a good thing.
NSL pats Case on the arm and smiles brightly.
If the beast is well fed, it won't want to eat us.
Case smiles, unconvinced.
We have to assume a few things, but then also assume we know nothing.
Malaysia sits up, and the rest of the party, always enamored by his clear, sharp mind, is eager to hear.
First, whatever is below, at the level of the dragon, is of extremely high value.
The party nods.
Second, there will be traps, defenses, monsters, or something on every level to protect it.
The party nods again, this time with a bit of angst in their faces.
Something or someone else knows what's down there and wants it as well.
The party all seems a bit bewildered. Malaysia smiles and places all of his fingers together in front of him and takes a deep breath.
No one knew that anything was in the blight, or that it was safe to travel here, except those that dared to venture here. We have to assume that that includes the agents of Sotonofuse, and that the map of E16, which was all dated in the future, is their plan to explore. What we ran into in Phila was likely just a patrol. So, Whoever discovered the treasure that lies below is acting alone and doing so very secretly and securely. They wouldn't be concerned with anyone finding or claiming what they had found, and yet they are. They are going to great lengths to protect it. Very dark and expensive lengths. So something else, since they discovered it, is threatening their find. Our goal is to figure out who or what that is and make sure they are on our side. The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
He pauses and sips more tea.
A lot to consider, but I think you are onto something, little one. The skeletons and the bricks were certainly defenses. Whatever we find below will either be the finder, the seeker, or more defenses. I'm hoping, as I'm sure Inicel does, that we can reason with some of them. And, of course, I still have questions about how this mine is related to the incredible tree above us.
Umgren folds his hands under his armpits and shivers.
Maybe the answers will be below.
Theophania smiles and begins gathering things. The rest of the party follows suit, and in a few moments they are packed and ready to go for the night. Before sleeping, Fodinus ran to the surface and out from under the base of the tree to signal to the airship, waiting for them, that all was well and they would signal them to pick them up when they were ready. He also grabbed a few things from the cart. The party takes a long rest. After sufficient rest, the group begins the climb down to the second sublevel. It is very familiar to the level above at first glance. There is almost an imperceptible but distinct low moaning sound coming from somewhere ahead of the party. The party makes wisdom saving throws. DC 13. Rolls are 18, 20, 7, 6, 4, 8, 9. 2 saves and 5 fails. Fodinus and Umgren begin to move forward, but the rest of the party seems a bit frozen in place. Umgren turns to look at them.
What is it?
I'm not going in there. Something's in there.
Malaysia is visibly shaken. Umgren scans the dark ahead and taps Fodinus on the shoulder to do the same. Umgren and Fodinus make perception checks. Roll 20 and 8. Fodinus shakes his head, unaware of anything in his visual field ahead. But Umgren sees 2 dark, leathery structures against the rough stone wall that seem out of place. He motions to Inicel, points at his scimitar and at hers. She nods, still scared, holds it up, and bright light beams out of it. Nothing is obvious in the bright light, but at the edge of the dim light, the leathery structures glisten, one on either side of the cavern, near the holes in the ceiling like they saw above. Umgren uses fairy fire. DC 13 Dex saving throw. Cloaker rolls 16. Umgren calls upon his drow magic to ignite a point ahead in the cavern with fairy fire, but nothing seems to happen. He shakes his head and leans close to Fodinus to whisper quietly.
I can see something up ahead. 2 leathery structures on the cave wall.
He points to both places, and Fodinus looks with the light of Inicel's scimitar and can now make out the 2 things. He notices they are clinging to the top of the cavern near the entrance to one of the natural holes.
Can you sneak close to them and strike them with your daggers?
Fodinus nods. Fodinus makes a stealth check. DC 11. Rolls 18. Fodinus moves ahead in the tunnel, so he is halfway between the 2 leathery objects. With his eyes attuned to their forms, he scans the tunnel ahead and thinks he sees 2 more clinging to the openings of the other small holes in the ceiling. He takes a deep breath. Fodinus makes a ranged dagger attack at Cloaker A, Assassinate, Surprise, Sneak, and Cloaker B. Rolls 23 versus AC 14 for 9 piercing damage, 9 surprise attack damage, and 21 sneak attack damage. Rolls 19 versus AC 14 for a hit for 0 damage. Fodinus hurls the first blade at the leathery structure on the right, striking it solidly and burying the dagger deep inside. The leather unfurls, revealing a white underbelly, rows of sharp teeth in a small head, and whip-like tail. His second dagger sinks into the leathery structure on the right, but the structure vanishes and Fodinus's blade clatters to the floor. The unfurled creature screeches loudly. Everyone rolls for initiative. Inicel casts Summon Beast. Inicel sees Fodinus's blades sink into the beast as it unfurls to its full form. Still frightened, she summons a flying beast next to the unfurled horror. She commands it to attack. Summoned beast attacks Cloaker. Rolls 19 versus AC 14. for 8 piercing damage. The large eagle rakes the creature with its claws, scratching its underbelly deeply. Umgren moves next to Fodinas, attacks Cloaker with handbow, casts Compelled Duel on Cloaker. Rolls 11 for a miss. Cloaker rolls 8 saving throw versus 13, is compelled. Umgren charges towards the beast and stands next to Fodinas. He raises his handbow and fires a bolt towards the fluttering mass, but it deflects it with a quick whip of its tail. Umgren screams a holy litany at the beast, and it turns its attention only to him. Fodinas holds his action. Fodinas, hearing Umgren's holy challenge and seeing the beast direct its gaze at the paladin, waits to see what the creature does. Malaysia casts Firebolt at Cloaker, disadvantage. Rolls 16 for a hit for 3 fire damage. Malaysia, scared of the horrifying vision, launches a firebolt and strikes its belly with a blast of flame. Case attacks Cloaker with spear, disadvantage. Rolls 15 versus AC 14 for a hit for 12 piercing damage. Case, afraid to move any closer, hurls his spear, striking the creature in its face. Peace moves behind Case, attacks Cloaker with spear, disadvantage. Rolls 15 versus AC 14 for a hit for 6 piercing damage. Peace, although frightened of what they heard, cannot see the beast. However, they saw Case throw his spear and move behind Case. Now seeing the unfurled flying monster, they throw their own spear and strike its belly a second time. Cloaker moves into melee with Umgren. Fodinas attacks with short sword, Sneak. Rolls 12 versus AC 14 for a miss. Cloaker attacks Umgren with Bite. Rolls 9 versus AC 19 for a miss. The leathery beast swoops low and gnashes at Umgren with its teeth. Fodinas takes the opportunity to slash at the beast with his short sword, but misses. The distraction of Fodinas' blade causes the creature to misjudge his bite, and his teeth come down on the end of Umgren's blade. Theophania attacks Cloaker with longbow. Rolls 26 versus AC 14 for a hit for 9 piercing damage. Theophania, suddenly feeling no fear, snatches up her bow and launches an arrow at the creature, striking it in the eye. It seems to be fluttering and flapping wildly as it can barely keep air. Inacel holds her action, commands her beast to attack. Inacel no longer feels afraid, but doesn't waste time and sends her summoned eagle to attack the creature and finish it off. Summoned beast attacks Cloaker. Rolls 11 for a miss. The eagle flies closer to slice with its talons, but the erratic flight pattern of the dying creature makes it impossible to hit. Umgren attacks with scimitar twice. Rolls 17 for 6 slashing damage and 21 for 7 slashing damage. With the creature's teeth on the end of his blade, Umgren swings upward, spins, and brings the back of his blade into the same path, cleaving the beast's head in half. It collapses to the cavern floor. Fodinas looks to the last two, which dissipate like mist. The party receives 600 experience points. Peace has achieved 5th level. The party moves to Fodinas and Umgren to examine the large flying beast.
This is a cloaker. I know them well from the Underdark. Nasty things that have a haunting moan, make duplicates of themselves, and prey on the weak in the dark. But they are quite valuable if harvested properly.
Inacel, Theophania, Malaysia, and Umgren study the cloaker carefully. Malaysia makes an Arcana check with advantage. Rolls 25.
The teeth, the tail, the hide, and some blood are all of reasonable value, and I think we can still collect them. The tail can actually make a magic whip, and the cloak can be used to make a cloak of displacement.
He sets to work with Fodinas and Inacel, harvesting the pieces and placing them in his chest of preserving when finished. The rest of the party searches the remainder of the cavern. Umgren, Case, Theophania, and Peace make investigation checks. Advantage time. Roll 17, 11, 8, and 13.
If we were in the Underdark, at a tunnel near a surface connection, a cloaker often has quite a pile of bones and bodies where they might be saying things of interest. I suspect in this particular tunnel, if the cloaker was placed here, they wouldn't have had much of a chance to eat random visitors.
Umgren moves some small stones with his scimitar.
But they must have eaten something.
Case looks around curiously.
The little holes up there.
Peace points.
Likely, there's something in the recesses. Case, boost us up.
Case lifts Peace to one hole, and Theophania boosts Umgren to another. They vanish behind the recess. Theophania kicks around loose stones and looks with the torch as best she can, but sees very little of interest, still a bit distressed by the haunting moan of the beast. Case moves to the opposite side of the tunnel and similarly finds little, though he is mostly concerned with Peace. Peace drops from the ceiling, landing gracefully on the floor.
More tool marks and holes, but not much else.
They point to another hole, and Case joins them. Umgren drops from the other hole a few seconds later.
Empty, except for the excavation of something before.
He also points to a different hole, and Theophania assists him. After about 15 minutes, 6 of the 7 holes have been searched, including the one the cloaker was actually clinging to, but with no luck other than some small crystal fragments. Umgren is boosted into the last hole. Inside the hole, Umgren crawls a bit more than an arm span, and then the hole turns back down, creating a basin of a stone about 2 arm spans across and about a leg deep. It is littered with bones of small animals, possibly rats or other rodents. He picks through them carefully, but finds no skulls of humanoids or other large bones, suggesting unsuspecting victims had wandered through, or been fed to the cloaker. He pulls a square of oilcloth and some strips from his bag, which Inicel insisted Peace and he take if they were going to search the holes, and gathers up everything in the debris field that looks like bones and puts it into a secure packet. He checks the rest of the debris but finds nothing of value. Satisfied, he returns to the mouth and drops through.
Only another packet of bones, all animal, for our druid to inter.
He smiles and places the packet next to Inicel as they finish up their work. Malaysia puts a cloaker tail, 20 pounds, a cloaker hide, 25 pounds, into the chest of preserving, 5 vials of cloaker blood into Inicel's bag of holding, and 24 cloaker teeth into his bag of holding. Half an hour later, everyone is finished, and all that remains is the carcass of the cloaker.
They probably already know we are here and that we dispensed with the Gricks. Should we give them an update?
Fodinus has the remains balled and folded into a solid, slightly dripping mass. Inicel looks concerned, and everyone stares at her. Then she smiles and nods. Fodinus grins and releases the morbid mass of cartilage and guts over the side. After a little less than the time before, only a faint splash is heard. Everyone waits apprehensively. Seconds tick by, and then another brief dragon's roar echoes from below. Fodinus smiles.
I think we're making a friend.
The party gathers their things and moves back to the ladder. Fodinus repeats his test of the ladder and gives everyone a thumbs up, beginning his descent. In less than 15 minutes, everyone is below and at the entrance of the next tooled tunnel. Umgren and Fodinus with Malaysia confirm that it is almost an identical configuration to the ones above and can make out holes in the ceiling again. Umgren gives a long, deep sigh. Malaysia suddenly tugs him on the sleeve and leans close.
Have you been trying the other lenses at your glasses?
Malaysia points to the spectacles on his face, which are currently set in the clear crystal mode. He smiles and nods and looks into the cave. He rotates to each of the different settings. The bright light setting makes everything completely dark. The Isvara setting makes the darkness impenetrable. The clear crystal looks like his normal dark vision. The last setting, with an odd purple-green hue to the stones ahead of him, doesn't seem to add much, but the details of the darkness seem slightly crisper. He turns back to the group with the purple-green still engaged and gasps. Most of the other party members are a glowing orange and red version of themselves, but Malaysia is almost white with red edges. Inicel, however, is only a faint yellow. He flips back to the clear crystal.
Amazing. I think this last set of lenses senses heat. I can see all of you so clearly, and Malaysia's much brighter, and Inicel barely registers.
Umgren smiles at the group and points at the glasses excitedly.
That might have helped with the Gricks or the mimics or the cloaker. Good to know now. But what about this cave?
Fodinus stares at his friend with an unimpressed smirk.
Nothing really, which is strange. We know it's probably the same distance as the others. If there's something there, it's either hidden or cold.
Umgren frowns.
Better to be safe than to be dead. May I borrow them, Umgren?
Umgren hands the glasses to Fodinus, who slips them on and sets them on the heat signature setting. He looks at everyone in the group for a few seconds.
Be right back.
Fodinus makes a stealth check, rolls 16. Familiar with the caves above, the tooling and the natural holes in the stone, Fodinus darts quickly half the distance into the space with the glasses off, and then quietly slides them on and surveys his surroundings. The holes in the ceiling around him, of which there are 4, are all dark. Ahead, where he expects the end of the tunnel based on their experience, he sees a faint yellow glow of a very large something which has odd borders. Fodinus makes an intelligence check. Rolls 6. Unsure if it's one large creature like a giant snake or something else, he flips back to the clear glass and looks, straining his eyes. The form of the beast or beasts is difficult at this range, but he is certain that they are there. Fodinus makes a stealth check. Rolls 27 critical. As quiet as the dead, he returns to the party and huddles close to them.
There is definitely something at the end of this tunnel. The feet is like incel, so it must be a cold-blooded creature.
Fodinus frowns.
Cold-blooded, but with a warm heart, in my case.
Incel smiles brightly and bows.
I don't think that we can trust that is the case here.
Theophania squeezes Inesil's shoulder and laughs softly.
Best to find out.
Theophania's familiar, filigree, emerges from her pocket and slides onto the floor. The little snake slithers rapidly down the floor of the tunnel. Theophania's eyes go a sparkling white, and Inesel grabs both of her hands and angles her body so that her eyes are not reflecting into the cave. Theophania begins whispering.
She is more than halfway. She smells other snakes and something more gamey. There are definitely snakes here. Large ones. Almost to the end. There are other reptiles ahead. 8 legs. Large, spiny backs. An infant. A young one. 2 adults. No eggs. She is at the back of the cavern. This is their nest here. There are long chains attached to the walls with bolts. The other ends are collars around the adults' necks. They are prisoners, but their babies are free. Their eyes are strange, magical. She is coming back now.
Theophania's eyes return to their normal color, and a few seconds later, filigree slithers up her leg onto her back and vanishes into her tunic. Malaysia makes an Arcana check. Advantage observations. Rolls 25.
An 8-legged reptile with a spiny back and strange eyes. Basilisks.
He folds his arms and sighs.
With an infant and a young one.
Inesel's voice, though a whisper, sounds sad and remorseful.
Here's what we're going to do.
Fodinus stands tall from the group, looks towards the far end of the cave, and gathers them back close to him.
They clearly don't want to be here, and the young ones won't leave them. They will starve soon without food. I think we should just keep going down, deal with what's below, and then figure out a clever way to free the basilisks.
Fodinus nods to Inesel.
Yes. For example, I think I could wild shape.
Fodinus holds up a hand and smiles.
We will figure it out later, Inesel. Let's get going.
Umgren nods, pats them both on the back, and moves to the ladder. Fodinus takes the lead and moves quickly down. The others follow, and within a few minutes, they are all in the next level. Unlike the prior levels, the far end of the tooled tunnel is illuminated and figures are moving there. The party quickly looks around and sees that they are veiled in darkness, but still move to the sides as best they can, being quiet. The party make stealth checks. DC 11. Rolls 24, 18, 21, 12, 19, 15, and 16. Quietly hiding in the dark against the cover of the tunnel walls, the party watches the lighted area ahead carefully. Inesel calls Sister and sends her closer. The party make perception checks. Roll 8, 10, 18, 19, 19, 17, and 9. Malaysia, Umgern, Theophania, and Peace can clearly make out a humanoid form, possibly a tiefling wearing scarlet, black, and dark green robes, moving in and out of the torchlight. Opposite the tiefling is what looks like a large pile of rocks that seem to also be moving here and there. Inesel lets Sister see for her. Case and Fodinus can barely see because of the cover they chose and wait patiently for the others to report. Sister makes her way quickly across the tunnel floor, sticking to the side wall so she can move in and out of the cracks. When she gets into the bright light of the torches, she can clearly see the tiefling who carries a staff and a spell book, studying a passage in the text. Across from it is a large, distinctly humanoid mass of rocks of great size that is rumbling around the tunnel, occasionally stomping its feet angrily at the tiefling, but then moving away. Sister quickly makes her way back to the party and vanishes in Inesel's pocket. Inesel whispers to the party quietly.
It is a wizard, like a conjurer, and he has an earth elemental with him now. But the elemental seems angry with the wizard.
Inacel drops into a squat and looks at the group, using her staff for support.
I speak primordial, and alone, I am not a threat. Stay here.
Malaysia walks out of his hiding place just as Umgren attempts to grab the back of his coat and pull him back, but misses. Malaysia strides proudly into the light of the torches towards the two figures and immediately addresses the elemental in primordial.
My king of rock and gem, is this tiefling harming you? May I assist?
The elemental looks at the fire genasi, turns its large boulder head to the left and right, then looks back at the tiefling.
Wizard want keep me here. Want me stay in tunnel. I want go rocks.
Well, that's not very nice, is it?
Malaysia continues the banter with the elemental in primordial. The tiefling seems to watch in amusement, looking up from his book occasionally, but mostly ignoring Malaysia.
No, not nice. Want to smash, wizard.
The elemental seems to rage a bit, with his rocky fists raised high, but then steps back to keep a distance from the wizard. Malaysia turns to the wizard.
Hello there, sir. I am Malaysia Ernbale, Child of Fire, Order of the Tower of High Sorcery, Bella Donwi. And you are?
He bows slightly to the tiefling, who closes his spellbook and lets it rest at his side on a bright gold chain. He stands perfectly still with a quarterstaff in one hand.
Inokron, Order of Senion, Master of the Elements, Conjurer Supreme, and Seeker of Fortunes. This may be a strange question, little fire genasi, but how, might I ask, did a child of the elemental plane of fire come to be in this place?
The wizard stays in his position, but makes a flourish with his free hand to indicate the tunnel. Malaysia makes an arcana check, rolls 9. Though he can't quite figure it out, Malaysia suspects the wizard has some sort of protection around him, keeping the elemental at bay.
Me? Well, I'm an explorer. I work with an archaeologist. She's also a tiefling. Aurelia, do you know her? We just arrived here today to claim this site for our beloved mistress.
Malaysia folds his hands across his chest proudly. Malaysia makes a deception check versus the wizard's insight, DC 11. Rolls 14.
You work with Aurelia, and she is here? That is most interesting. May I indulge you in a brief story of what I have found here? I would love the assistance of your mistress, who is, of course, known to me.
He bows deeply. Malaysia nods.
Very well. You see, these tunnels were dug from the surface at the dawn of this age to salvage the stone used for the foundations of the city above us. The rest of this area was an immense, dense, and beautiful forest. The people who founded this city built it from the precious and diverse woods of the land, and created a most magnificent testament to ingenuity and construction. As they dug down into this solid stone, they occasionally found natural formations where crystals, some precious, others not, could be mined. It increased the wealth of the city, but, alas, the evils of Santernofus laid waste to this land and made it uninhabitable for more than 1,000 Isvarana. But as you and your mistress discovered when you arrived, all that has changed. The seeds of the trees that used to grow here have emerged, and the great tree. When I arrived 2 moon turns ago, I saw the tree and knew something great lay within these mines.
The wizard pauses and looks at the elemental, who rages at him again and rumbles with anger.
And what did you find down here?
Malaysia puts a hand behind his back and motions for the elemental to calm down. It promptly goes a bit quieter and sits on its stony bottom.
Below us, few levels down, is the most incredible thing that you will ever see. It is a huge spherical cavern, some 20 arm spans in diameter, made of pure amethyst. Thousands of enormous crystals of amethyst. It is worth an unspeakable. But I was only able to glimpse it for a brief moment.
But why is that?
Malaysia produces several balls of flame and begins juggling them. The elemental claps his rocky palms together with glee.
Very nice trick, young sir. There is, you see, a dragon below. A gem dragon, and they are attracted to gems. This one seems to have settled there. I have no hope of defeating the dragon on my own, not even with the help of that mindless pile of rubble. Probably not even with your help. So, I decided I would create some defenses above to keep anyone out until I could determine how best to secure and excavate the gems, but dragons are clever and magical. It apparently called to its minions. Good for me, as it gave me some more corpses for my defenses, but bad because several of them, one who is very strong, got below me and have held their ground. This elemental was going to be my defense of this lair, but I'm not able to make him permanent or secure him here. I'd really like to have 3 or 4 at this level, because with their ability to simply glide through rock and slam their enormous bodies into their enemies, they could clear that wretched dragon's minions. But I can only manage the one.
Inokron squats to the floor, folds his legs in front of him, and rests his staff across his legs. Malaysia stops juggling the balls of fire, and they absorb into his head. The elemental seems to stare with his mouth hanging open, a small rivulet of sand dribbling out. The wizard scoffs and rolls his eyes.
So how long will that elemental last?
Malaysia also sits cross-legged, about 2 arm spans from Inokron.
Only an hour, I'm afraid, and I conjured him nearly 3/4 of an hour ago. He'll be gone in less than 15 minutes.
The earth elemental bumps his fists together and bits of stone and debris clatter to the floor. Malaysia turns back to Inokron. Malaysia makes a perception check. Rolls 3. Behind the wizard's head on the far wall, for a fleeting moment, Malaysia thought he saw a stone move.
Where do you come from, Inokron?
Well, I was born in the north, in Ambeth. My parents were in the court of the High King. That's how I was afforded a wizard's education at Galantarian, you see. Then I ventured through Devonmere and visited the Sisters of the City of Valor for a long time. Brilliant spellcasters, those colorful houses. And in the towers of Pathilia, including Agamon, Belladonwi, and the Vinporus. Your people, little Genasi. And then in Ikakelther, a miraculous city of magic. You're a spellcaster, and you cannot study at Ikakelther. Why are you living?
The wizard pauses and twirls a bit of hair and pulls it behind his right horn. Malaysia makes a perception check. Rolls 12. The same stone behind the wizard's head definitely moves, and Malaysia lets his eyes linger there for a second longer. A great eyeball seems to open in the stone, and a clawed hand emerges and waves silently. A gentle whispering sound fills his ears.
Little fire brother, we help. Bad wizard, we help.
The clawed stone hand sinks back into the wall, but only enough so that one claw still protrudes. Malaysia watches it move down the wall, across the floor, and towards him. He nonchalantly unfolds his hands and places them on the stone floor behind him, leaning back.
Malaysia Ermdale, I think I have indulged you long enough. I know Aurelia well, and she is a bitter enemy. So much so that I have a spy who travels with her and always alerts me to her location so that I can stay far away. She would kill me on sight should she find me. You see, I'm not Inokron, as I said. My real name is Calendal. Aurelia claims to have captured Calendal in a ruby, as she often does with her enemies, but I tricked her. I am clever that way. But her reputation for having captured me is so great that she would never let me live. So I know, little Genasi, that you lie. She is not here. You've never traveled with her. It was a strangely convenient story, however, so I can only assume someone sent you after me. Perhaps through the means of a contract, or to claim my rightful treasure. But it is of no matter. You will be dead shortly. Elemental, smash this worm to dust.
The rock elemental looks up from his setting place, stands, and looks at Malaysia. As if such a thing can happen, the rocky face splits into a macabre grin and laughs a groggy, dusty roar. Then collapses into fine pebbles, stone, sand, and then is gone.
Damn, my hour is up.
The wizard stands to his full height, and a shimmering ball of arcane energy dissipates around him. He pulls his quarterstaff close, raises his spellbook in front of them, and then pauses. Malaysia feels a firm, claw hand grasp his own and smiles at the wizard.
Bye!
And with that, the hand begins dragging Malaysia rapidly to the side wall, up the side, and suspends him from the ceiling. Now hanging freely, he zings back out of the tunnel, past his own party, down the wall of the hole, past another opening, and then down another hole wall, then across the ceiling of a tunnel, and is dropped to his feet. From out of the wall, a big eye winks at him.
We'll be
Malaysia
right
dusts
back.
himself off and waits a few moments. 3 at a time, the rest of the party comes zinging along the ceiling with looks of horror on their faces, their hands held by rocky claws, and land next to Malaysia. When everyone is back, Umgren grabs Malaysia's shoulder firmly, hugs him briefly, and then glares.
What exactly do you think you were doing? A wizard and an elemental? He could have killed you instantly.
Umgren stands back, arms akimbo, fuming.
Ignoring Malaysia's clearly, blatantly dangerous and, of course, disrespectful behavior. How in Isvar did we get down here?
Fodinus looks around at the dark tunnel but sees no additional hands.
I think they will come back soon. My guess is they're dealing with the wizard.
From the tunnel entrance, they hear angry screaming, a few nasty phrases, see a blast of fire, and then a yell that seems to dissipate as if someone were falling or ascending quickly.
I think the wizard's been ejected.
Malaysia smiles at Umgren and then frowns as the paladin continues to glare. The party makes investigation and perception checks. Roll 6, 10, 16, 6, 2, 19, 15, and roll 8, 18, 4, 8, 22, 18, and 13. Malaysia, Peace, and Fodinus, not disturbed by the confusing journey from the level above, take note that this tunnel is very similar to the above, extending far back to the same distance, with the same natural holes in the ceiling. Case, Theophania, and Peace detect a faint glow from the holes, and Peace taps Malaysia on the shoulder and points. Malaysia smiles and goes over to Theophania, who lifts him to one hole, while Case lifts Peace to another. They both vanish into the darkness. Inside the small cavern in the ceiling, Malaysia quickly finds a very large blue gem, slightly glowing, at the end of the space. The surface is rough and covered with scag and dirt, but the blue crystal inside is easily discernible. He brushes it off a bit and hears Primordial next to him.
Hungry? I'm happy to share with you.
Malaysia turns to his left to see a creature protruding halfway from the stone wall. The yellow-orange eyeball below a gaping mouth of teeth seems to be manifesting a grin. One large leg with 3 hooked toes and 2 small arms with hooked claws are also visible. It reaches with one of its claws, grabs a chunk of the blue gem off the massive piece, and hands it to Malaysia. Malaysia looks at the stone curiously and at the creature.
None for me, thanks, but you have it.
He tosses it into the gaping maw, and the beast chews it quickly and returns the grin. Malaysia climbs down, drops into Theophania's arms and to the floor. As he lands, the creature emerges from the stone wall. Peace drops from their hole, and a beast follows him as well. The rest of the party look on at the 2 3-armed, 3-legged beasts the size of a humanoid curiously as a third one appears, followed by a much larger version. The larger one picks up Malaysia with one hand and sits him on his shoulder next to its mouth. Thank you for visiting Engedrian. Don't forget to find us on Facebook, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube for additional content, battle maps, and background details. We hope you're enjoying our adventure. We can't wait to hear what happens next.